Welcome to Mikon's Hardware. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Kllisre X99 D8 motherboard. Let's start with the motherboard specification. The motherboard is designed for Intel LGA 2011 version 3 socket. It supports Intel Core i7, 5000 and 6000 series, as well as Intel Xeon E5 V3 and V4 series. The motherboard has 8 memory slots for DDR4 RAM. It works in quad-channel configuration. Regular desktop RAM as well as server-registered ECC RAM are supported. There are 6 USB 3 ports and 6 USB 2 ports. 4 USB 3 and 4 USB 2 ports are available through the back panel. 2 USB 3 ports and 2 USB 2 ports are available on the front panel through the connectors. You will also find 8 SATA 3 ports on the motherboard, 2 4-pin fan headers, 2 3-pin fan headers, 3 PCI Express X16 slots, 2 PCI Express X1 slots, 1 NVMe slot for PCI Express drives, which is working as PCI Express 3.0 X4. Extra features are 7.1 audio, LAN port, M.2 Wi-Fi slot, and a silly LED which can be turned off in the BIOS. The motherboard layout is very similar to Xeon X99 TF and Xeon X99 F8. The major differences is just one M.2 slot for PCI Express drives, the I/O shield is not built in, and the VRM cooling is just a large heatsink instead of 2 annoying fans as Xeon motherboards have. The power on and reset buttons on the motherboard are also missing, which is not a big deal. Now let's go to the test results. Originally, I have planned to release this video on Friday, but during testing I have met some problems which I had to resolve, and now all the problems have been resolved and I'm here with a full detailed review of the motherboard. I have tested motherboard with all the CPUs I have, which is Xeon E5-2640 V3, Xeon E5-2640 V3, Xeon E5-2650 V3, Xeon E5-1650 V3 and Core i7-6800K. There is nothing extra I can tell, apart of that they are working. That's why now I'm going to start with more interesting points. First of all, the motherboard comes with a very limited BIOS which does not support CPU overclocking. Trying to overclock Xeon E5-1650 V3 or i7-6800K does not boot at all, and to get the motherboard boot again you have to clear the BIOS settings. Fortunately, Kllisre X99 D8 is working perfectly fine with BIOS from Xeon X99 F8. That is why all the test results, which I'm gonna be reporting here, were conducted with BIOS from Xeon X99 F8. One more problem is that the BIOS on Kllisre X99 D8 is locked or write protected. That's why you will not be able to use FPT tool to flash your Xeon X99 F8 BIOS straight away. This is possible to fix by going to the BIOS and adjusting the security settings and disabling the BIOS block. After that, you will be able to use FPT tool to flash X99 F8 BIOS and transform your Kllisre X99 D8 motherboard into Xeon X99 F8. With Xeon X99 F8 BIOS, it's possible to unlock Turbo Boost, it's possible to adjust memory timings, and it's possible to overclock CPUs with unlocked multiplier. I'm not sure how that happened and if it's applicable to all Kllisre X99 D8 motherboards or just to my particular one, but after I have flashed Xeon X99 F8 BIOS with FPT tool, I was not able to use FPT tool anymore. Thus, first I have flashed Xeon X99 F8 full BIOS, and after that I tried to use FPT tool to flash BIOS with removed microcodes to unlock Turbo Boost of Xeon E5 CPUs. Unfortunately, this resulted in an error and a bricked motherboard. After I have used my USB flash programmer to flash the BIOS chip on the motherboard, the BIOS chip was fully unlocked and I was able to use FPT tool to flash and reflash whatever BIOS I wanted. Maybe this is not gonna be a problem for you, but I'm telling you my experience with the motherboard. Another problem which took me very much time to figure out what's going on was Turbo Boost unlock. After unlocking Turbo Boost of my Xeon E5-2640 CPU and trying to test it, I have figured out some weird behavior. First of all, the system was crashing when I was using any kind of benchmark which utilizes AVX instructions. For example, running Cinebench R20 was resulting in freezes and crashes. The same applies to the beta CPU-Z benchmark, which is using AVX instructions. What was even more weird is that CPU frequency would not be locked to the maximum turbo speed in games. The CPU core clock was fluctuating from the minimum turbo speed to the maximum turbo speed, and sometimes it was just stuck at 1.1 GHz and not moving up and down until the game benchmark finishes. This was very frustrating. I was trying to use native Kllisre X99 D8 BIOS as well as Hongxin X99 F8 BIOS. Nothing seemed to be changing. I also tried to update all possible settings in the BIOS, disable power management systems, disable power efficiency. I tried everything I could try. Nothing worked. After a while, I just gave up and decided to disable Turbo Boost Unlock and tried to test the CPU without Turbo Boost Unlock. First, I started with uninstalling CPU MC update driver, which was installed in Windows. And much to my surprise, everything started to work perfectly fine. I had my Hongxin X99 F8 BIOS with removed microcodes for the CPU. I had my E5 V3 drivers installed through the USB flash drive, but I have uninstalled the CPU MC update driver in Windows and restored original MC update file for the Intel Xeon CPUs in Windows System 32 folder. After that, everything suddenly started to work well. Cinebench R20 did not crash anymore, CPU-Z AVX benchmark also passing well, and in-game CPU is running at its maximum turbo clock speed on all cores. This what I can say is that if you're planning to do Turbo Boost Unlock on Kllisre X99 D8, do not install CPU MC update drivers in Windows. Now let's go to the regular testing that I usually do with the motherboards and see what kind of results we can get. Windows Sleep Mode works on the motherboard, Linux is supported, boot from NVMe drive is also supported, VRAM thermal performance is acceptable, but here I would have to say something extra. First of all, the thermals are better than on Hongxin X99 TF or Hongxin X99 F8. In spite of Hongxin boards have two extra small fans to cool the VRM, they don't seem to help much, and the large heatsink on Kllisre X99 D8 is performing better. Second, I was able to identify temperature offset on the motherboard temperature center. This temperature offset is minus 20 degrees Celsius with Hongxin X99 F8 BIOS. The temperatures are 20 degrees higher with the original Kllisre X99 D8 BIOS. I have tested the VRAM thermals with the overclocked Xeon E5-1650 V3 to 4.3 and 4.4 GHz. For the CPU cooler, I first was using Cooler Master Hyper Evo 212, but after that I was using huge Noctua cooler, which is capable of cooling even super hot CPUs. Unfortunately, when the power system on the motherboard is starting to overheat, when the temperatures reach to 97-95 degrees, CPU is suddenly starting to consume about 250 watts and more of power and overheating very fast. Not even Noctua cooler can cool it down to the reasonable temperatures, and CPU is starting to throttle itself up. First, I thought it could be related to the duration of the benchmark and that after a while CPU is starting to consume more and more power, but it's not the case. After I have plugged in a server-grade fan which is rotating at 6000 to 7000 RPM and producing shitloads of sound, this fan was cooling the VRAMs on the motherboard. As long as VRAM is staying into reasonable temperatures or under 80 degrees, the CPU is consuming about 160-170 watts and staying within reasonable temperature. But after a while, even such powerful fan as this server-grade 6000 RPM fan is not able to cool the VRAM on the motherboard. As soon as VRAM is starting to overheat, the CPU is consuming more and more power and overheating very fast, starts to throttle or crash. This, I would say, if you're planning to use your system 24/7 and constantly run some kind of a background works, for example, if it's gonna be a virtual environment or anything like that, or if you have long renderings for a few hours video rendering, then I do not recommend Xeon E5-1650 V3 if you're planning to overclock it. On the other hand, if you plan to do some gaming, then overclocking 1650 V3 to 4.3 GHz should be good enough. In the most cases, you will be GPU limited regardless. As I have mentioned before, I have tested all my Xeon E5 CPUs on Kllisre X99 D8 motherboard. Now let's take a look at some particular examples. Xeon E5-2640 V3 works on this motherboard with maximum RAM speed DDR4 1866, the same as on the Huanan-G motherboards. I have tested 16GB of RAM, 32GB of RAM, 128GB and 224GB. The biggest amount with 224GB was achieved with 4 sticks of 32GB DDR4 2400, 2 sticks of 32GB each DDR4 2666, and 2 sticks 16GB each DDR4 2133. Thus, I can safely say that this motherboard supports at least 256GB of RAM with 8 sticks of 32GB each. Turbo Boost is working properly fine with this CPU. Turbo Boost Unlock also works. CPU power management does not work, unfortunately, the same as with the Huanan-G X99 motherboards. If CPU is exceeding its power limit, it's starting to downclock itself, even though the turbo boost frequency is unlocked and CPU is supposed to operate at its maximum turbo frequency of 3.4 GHz. PCI Express X16 slots configuration is exactly the same as on Huanan-G motherboards. First one is X16, second one is X16 as well, and the last one is X4. Geekbench 5 and Userbenchmark running Xeon E5-2640 V3 on Kllisre X99 D8 is available in the video description. With the Xeon E5-1650 V3, maximum RAM speed is DDR4 2400, the same as on the Huanan-G motherboards. I have tested 96 GB of RAM, 4 sticks 8 GB each, and 4 sticks 16 GB each. Thus, I can say that this motherboard will definitely support 128 GB of non-registered non-ECC memory. Xeon E5-1650 V3 was possible to overclock to 4.5 GHz, but to make it stable I had to downclock it to 4.4 GHz, and to make motherboard not to overheat and be anyhow bearable I had to downclock it to 4.3 GHz. It's possible to overclock the CPU using X99 F8 BIOS settings, and it's also possible to use Intel Extreme Tuning utility to overclock E5-1650 V3. Power management of the CPU is also working with the Intel XTU tool. PCI Express X16 slots configuration is the same with the Xeon E5-2640 V3. We have X16, X16 and X4. Geekbench 5 and Userbenchmark links are in the video description. Kllisre X99 D8 is having exactly the same problems with Core i7-6800K as the Huanan-G motherboards. Maximum RAM speed is DDR4 2600. I have tested 16, 32, 64 and 96 GB of RAM. This means that this motherboard will happily work with 128 GB of RAM with the non-registered DDR4 memory sticks and with Core i7 CPUs. Overclocking, I was able to achieve the same 4.1 GHz as on Huanan-G motherboards. X99 F8 BIOS does not work to overclock Core i7-6800K, Intel XTU works. PCI Express X16 slots configuration is also identical to the Huanan-G X99 F8 motherboard, having X8, X16 and X0. Thus, if you are using Intel Core i7 CPU, which has just 28 PCI Express lanes, make sure to install your graphics card into the second PCI Express slot, because the first one is going to work as X8 only. The last PCI Express X16 slot is not going to work with Core i7 CPUs. Thus, if you plan to install an expansion card with extra NVMe PCI Express SSD or anything else like that, make sure to install the expansion card into the first PCI Express slot and the graphics card into the second PCI Express slot. Let's move on to the other test results. With the Xeon E5-2620 V3 and Xeon E5-2650 V3, I did not get anything extra interesting to say. Everything is exactly the same as with the Xeon E5-2640 V3. Now, on the motherboard we have USB 3.0 ports and USB 2.0 ports, which are both working perfectly fine. SATA 3 ports working with no issues. Fan headers are almost identical to Huanan-G motherboards. Huanan-G X99 F8 has just one 4-pin fan header. Kllisre X99 D8 has two 4-pin fan headers. Both of the fan headers are working, it's possible to regulate and adjust fan speed. 3-pin fan headers regulation does not work, and the fans are also not displaying in HW Monitor or any other software to monitor and adjust fans. M.2 NVMe slot works, and works with the full speed PCI Express 3.0 X4. Audio quality, I don't have much to say here, I would say it's acceptable, but I'm not a musician. LAN port works as well and works with the desired speed. What I was able to extra test is Nvidia SLI. I happen to have two GTX 1080s on my hands, and I have tested them installing on Kllisre X99 D8 motherboard on the first and second slot. Much to my surprise, after installing the cards and connecting them with the SLI bridges, booting into Windows, I was greeted with a message from Nvidia control panel that my system is SLI compatible. After enabling SLI, I tried different games, but unfortunately only one game is able to utilize SLI configuration. This is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Officially, the game is working with the DirectX 11 and DirectX 12 API, and by the specification, DirectX 12 does not support Nvidia SLI. It is only supporting multiple GPUs. Nevertheless, if I'm trying to run the game in DirectX 11 mode, only one graphics card is used. If I am trying to run the game in DirectX 12 mode, we can see that both of the graphics cards are being utilized. The memory consumption is identical on the two GPUs, the clock frequency is equal, and overall frame rate is higher when compared to just single GPU. In 2020, multi-GPU configuration is mostly outdated and not really relevant, but since I had an option to test multi-GPU configuration on Kllisre X99 D8, I did that, and it's a pleasant surprise to see that Nvidia SLI works with no problems. Now let's make a conclusion. What to expect from Kllisre X99 D8 motherboard? Right now the motherboard is being sold for around 90 euros, and I would say it's a very decent option. It doesn't cost as much as 100 X99 boards. They have jumped in price recently to around 100 euros, but it's also not significantly cheaper. Thus, if you're trying to pick between Kllisre X99 D8 and 100 X99 F8, pick whichever is cheaper. On the pro side, I would say that it is its price, many expansion slots, at least 256 gigs of RAM is supported, it looks nice, it works with 100 X99 F8 BIOS, which unlocks all the required features such as overclocking Xeon E5-1650 V3, adjusting RAM timings, and unlocking Turbo Boost. When compared to 100 X99 motherboards, it also having one pro is that it includes a big heatsink on the VRAM instead of two extra annoying small fans, which on 100 X99 motherboards after time will start to produce stupid and disgusting noise, and it will be very hard to find the same fans for the replacement. On the cons side, I can mention broken temperature sensors and the silly LED. Broken temperature sensors is just a common problem for the Chinese motherboards. Fortunately, at least one temperature sensor is working on the motherboard, even though with 100 X99 F8 BIOS it has minus 20 degrees Celsius offset. Thus, if you see 16 degrees Celsius, it's actually 36, and if you see 20, it's 50, and so on. Silly LED is fortunately possible to disable in the BIOS. I did not check if that's possible with 100 X99 F8 BIOS, but it's definitely possible to do that with original Kllisre X99 D8 BIOS. What is a bit more annoying is half-locked BIOS. Out of the box, the BIOS is locked and it's not possible to flush it with the FPT tool. It's possible to adjust BIOS settings and disable the BIOS lock. After that, you will be able to use FPT to flush the BIOS. But in my case, this worked just once. For the second time, after flushing X99 F8 BIOS and trying to flush BIOS 4 Turbo Unlock, it did not work and FPT ended up with errors and my motherboard ended up to be bricked. Thus, I had to use my USB flash programmer to restore BIOS. And after I have removed the protection from the BIOS chip with my USB flash programmer, everything started to work as expected. I can flush and reflush whichever BIOS I want using the FPT tool. My score for the motherboard would be 8 out of 10, and if I would have to pick between Kllisre X99 D8 and 100 X99 F8, I would say it's a very tough choice. Really depends on the price. Other than that, these are basically identical motherboards. And if you are technical enough to use USB flash programmer to update the BIOS of your motherboard, and you're trying to save any penny you can do, and Kllisre X99 D8 motherboard is significantly cheaper than Huananzhi X99 F8, then go for Kllisre X99 D8. Whichever motherboard you pick, I think they gonna serve you well. Link where I bought the motherboard will be provided in the video description, but if you want to support my channel and me, you can follow other AliExpress links. Regarding the alternatives, you can obviously take a look at Huananzhi X99 TF and X99 F8. For the small form factor, look at X99 8M and Kllisre X99 D4, which I have already finished testing and preparing a video for it. Tinsha X99 dual socket motherboard is on its way. Unfortunately, during the Chinese New Year, Chinese post doesn't work, thus my parcel has stuck somewhere in China and I'm expecting it by the end of February 2020. That's all I have for you for today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, I hope you have enjoyed it, goodbye.